Hello, my name is Bruce Fontaine. I am a Canadian filmmaker based in Vancouver, Canada. I also have a background in stunts, stunt coordinating, acting, as well as martial arts. I was very fortunate to work in what some people call the golden era of Hong Kong films, especially where action films are concerned. I worked there predominantly during the time of 1988 to, I'd say, 92. That was kind of the peak period for my involvement in Hong Kong films. I started martial arts back in the 70s. I'm a product of the Bruce Lee and Kung Fu TV series era. When I was a young boy at that time, Bruce Lee movies were hitting all the theaters. The Kung Fu TV series was on, and so it exposed young guys like myself to martial arts more so than probably ever before. So I became encouraged to try out martial arts, Chinese martial arts in particular. I was introduced to a Chole Fat school, that's a type of Chinese Kung Fu, through some Chinese Canadian friends, and joined a school run by a someone who's considered a pioneer in Vancouver, I guess, a gentleman named Master Wong Ha. During that time, one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing was going to the Chinatown theaters on the weekends. You had Golden Harvest, Shaw Brothers, and Sun Sing. What became very popular at that time was, of course, the Kung Fu comedies. I was introduced to those when Snake and the Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master by Jackie Chan came out. Also at that time, the Jet Li films came out, and coincidentally in Vancouver, we had what would essentially be our first wushu coach arrive from China, a gentleman who was also considered a pioneer in Canada, named Leung Xiaoyu. So I went and started to train wushu. I qualified for the 1986 Canadian national team, which took me to Tianjin, China for the second international wushu championships in 1986. Prior to going to Tianjin, we stopped off in Hong Kong, and I was invited along with one of the other team members to participate in a variety show called Enjoy Yourself Tonight. So I did a little, kung fu performance for the TV people. I had a couple people that were part of the cast for Enjoy Yourself Tonight comment to me that, wow, you should think about doing some work here in Hong Kong. I shipped back to Canada and resumed wushu training. Also around that time, there was another film that was out. It was called Armor of God, which some of you will know as the prequel to the Jackie Chan film Operation Condor, and I also say that's kind of strangely karmic for me. Anyways, I saw that film, and there was a young lady I was kind of dating at the time, and she knew how much I really was into the Hong Kong film stuff, and it was kind of a secret dream I had been harboring. And she actually turned to me during the film and said, if you really want to go, you should probably just get more serious about it. And as has often been the case in my life, sometimes I'll just click and say, all right, gosh, I'm just going to do this. So I made it my goal to head off to Hong Kong. I started taking acting lessons. I started to change my training to adapt to what I thought would be more suitable for film. I also started to save up money. I had a friend that I used to be a roommate with. He actually was back in Hong Kong, so I reached out to him. He offered to let me stay with him for a little while. I had a letter of introduction through one of my wushu students' families, knew an older generation actor. I believe his name was Li Pengfei. So they gave me an introduction letter, which I was supposed to take to a company called Cinema City. Anyways, within a year of making that decision, I literally got on a plane and shipped off to Hong Kong. So when I arrived in Hong Kong, it was October 21st, 1988. I was very fortunate in that I had a very lengthy meeting with a gentleman named Sectine. Some of you would know him as Dean Sec. He was one of the bosses at Cinema City, along with a guy named Maka, some of you know as Carl Mock. He was actually really super gracious with me. Spent a lot of time saying, well, you need to get some headshots. You have no headshots. You need to get some sort of a resume. I got also invited at that time to take part in Aces Go Places. But I gotta say, I didn't usually like to talk about it in the past, but that day was disastrous for me. Having never done a film fight and dealing with language issues, they put me in a scene where they said, you're gonna fight with Carl Mock. And there were a couple other people in that scene, but they had this one part where after I had arrived on set, I literally sat around, I think for like 8 hours waiting for something to happen. Then they pulled me up and say, you're gonna do this scene, we want you to run and do a kick. Now they were patient and they were trying with me, but the first thing they wanted me to do was run in and just do like a push kick into the chest of Maka. There were probably like 6 different directors, and I gotta say, combined with my inexperience with film fighting and combined with not being sure which person to follow directions, because one stunt guy would tell me one thing, one stunt guy would tell me another thing, so I had like these 6 different guys giving me direction. Well, long story short, I kicked Maka one time a little too hard and caught him in the throat. I was quietly and discreetly let go. Anyways, around that time, I was hanging out with Jeff Falcon, and he introduced me to a gentleman. His name was Mimo Gaspari. He introduced himself as a director and said that he was working on a film for IFD and asked me to participate. I didn't know of IFD at that time, and those of you who do know about IFD will know it's not the same as the mainstream Hong Kong bigger budget films. I guess one of my best experiences and most memorable ones with IFD was Kickboxer King. Kickboxer King was kind of a different and unique opportunity for both myself and Ken Goodman. There were 2 young men that worked at IFD at the time, Alton Chung and a fellow named Vincent. I can't remember his last name right now, but they were both young Hong Kong men that had gone to America to go to film school and were just getting their start back in Hong Kong at IFD. Anyways, we worked with them quite a number of times, and they're always really good with us guys. They approached me and Ken and said, hey, do you guys want to try to do something a little bit more than you normally do? And by that they explained that they wanted us to help them with the fight choreography. They also wanted us to actually help them a little bit on developing the script and the concept. Essentially what they wanted to do was kind of an IFD take on Rocky III. So we helped them with the dialogue, we helped them with working out the script. We actually all sat together one night and watched Rocky III together to get inspiration. And then they went about and probably was one of their bigger, more loftier aspirations in terms of films for IFD. Anyways, it was great fun. There were, of course, problems. One of the funny things that happened was on day 1 of filming, we did the training sequence, and they took myself out to an area, it was near a reservoir or a dam of some sort, and this was at the hottest time of year. It was like August in Hong Kong, and unlike Hollywood films where they have trailers or tents, they had nothing. They needed to have an umbrella, and I had a tank top on during the training sequence, and unbeknownst to everybody, I got sunburned. And the very next day was the boxing sequences. So when I got into the gym, the joke was, Bruce, take off your tank top, because even though I was bare chested, it looked like I still had a tank top on, because part of it was beet red and part of me was white boy. So for those of you out there that obviously are fans of Hong Kong films and of Jackie Chan, you'll most likely know the film Operation Condor, which myself and many of the other Westerners working there at the time were involved in. In hindsight, retrospect, when I look back at the film, I often think it's a bit of a final swan song for us guys that were working there kind of from that 88 to 91, 92 period. Because after that, things kind of changed. Anyways, as they often do with a lot of these films, they'll try to do big cattle calls thinking they'll find some other people. And as was often the case, it ended up being the regular 10 guys or so that were there at that time. I showed up at the audition, and one of the people running the audition was one of Jackie's stunt guys, a fellow named Benny. Some of you might remember him from the Final Fight Police Story 2. He's the mute character that does a lot of the really cool kicks. Benny pulled me aside and said, Bruce, you're in. Don't worry, you're in. So that kind of made me happy. The film took like 9 months to film. If you're familiar with the film, or you remember the scene that takes place in a Moroccan hotel, that was actually the first scene filmed, and that was a set that was built in Hong Kong. Fortunately for Ken Goodman and I, it was the first scene they shot, and they spent about a month on it. And Jackie, I think at that time, didn't really know most of the Westerners, and I think he just thought we're just guys looking for a gig, looking for a little work. But for Ken Goodman and I, we were both huge fans, and we wanted to learn. And when we, told Jackie that, he kind of warmed up to us, and I often say kind of embraced us. He would actually take myself and Ken to the editing trailer. He had his own editing trailer that would be off to the side of the sets most times, and he would actually be physically editing his film. And he would take us and he'd say, well, that's why I chose this angle, this is why I chose this particular frame, and I knew I was going to cut it here. And he really had a vision of his film, and he really understood the editing process. And I took that with me, and that's probably one of the greatest things I took away from my experience with in Operation Condor. It's things that I still use to this day. The other thing was, obviously, the production value was much higher than any of the other films that we worked in at that time. You could see that his team, especially the stunt people, all the departments, but especially the stunt people, really took a lot of care and pride in the work they were doing. They really wanted to make the stunts just so, and they wanted to make the action, the fight choreography just so, and Jackie had his own personal way of doing things, and they were always cognizant of that and trying to do their very best. So it was a really positive experience seeing that, as a lot of times other films you'd work on, it'd just be, we gotta go, we got very little time here, rush. But Jackie, as I said, spent 9 months on that film. We went to Morocco. We honestly didn't do a great deal in Morocco, but we worked there. We returned to Hong Kong to shoot the ending scene. Not to say anything negative about the other Westerners that were there, but I think at this point the film had been going on for 7 months, I guess, at that point. And Jackie's patient wasn't what it was in the beginning of the production. And he would let some of the Westerners have a go. If they didn't pick up the timing or the rhythm that he wanted, you would often hear him yell, Bruce, Ken, and he'd swap us in. One of the things that, occasionally gets asked was, about the ending scene, and how is it these two guys, meaning Ken Lo and Vincent Lin, kind of appear out of nowhere? And I always say, well, the way I was explained to about it was for myself and Ken and a few of the other people that are seen here and there. Jackie's always evading us or beating us whenever there's a fight exchange. So they kind of, as they're working through the story, because they don't always have a script when they're doing this, they decided to create 2 new characters when we came back to Hong Kong and we're filming the underground Nazi fortress scene. So they decide, all right, we'll use Ken Lo because he's one of Jackie's guys. And then they just were looking at, well, who are the other Westerners that are still in, that haven't been cast. And they decided to go with Vincent. And I think, me personally, I think one of the reasons for choosing Vincent, I think might have been, one, he's taller than the other Westerners. He also was very good with the legs. Not to say the other guys that hadn't worked on the film weren't good with the legs, but Vincent's tall, he's got a good look, and he is very good with the legs. So I often look at it and go, that's probably why they went with Vincent. And again, the Hong Kong films, they don't always have a script. They work more on a concept or a premise, and they just kind of wing it as they go. And even Jackie on that big a budget still did that sort of thing. So I think as they were filming, they just went, oh yeah, we've been beating the snot out of Ken and Bruce. We need to find a couple guys he hasn't beaten up yet. And I think that's honestly how they arrived at Ken Lo and Vincent Lin. Jackie, when there was downtime, would actually hang out with us just like the guys. For example, we actually were very bored during our time in Morocco, and between myself, Ken Goodman, Steve Tartaglia, we, on a little cassette recorder, made a rap song revolving around Operation Condor, and Jackie actually came and sang a couple lines on this little rap song we did together. And I always look back and that was kind of, really nice of Jackie. It was just kind of a human thing. Game Boy at that time was quite a big rage, and Jackie was addicted to it, as was Ken Goodman. I actually avoided buying Game Boy because everyone owned a Game Boy, because I knew I was going to be addicted, so I avoided it. But on occasion I would use Ken Goodman's. And one day I was in the single trailer for Operation Condor playing the game, and I was having trouble with a level, and Jackie was looking over my shoulder and he could see I was having trouble with the level, and he just snatched it out of my hand and went, and said, there, I got you to the next level. And later on he told me he's spent so much time on it, he's gotten expert at it. When I meet a lot of people, especially in the film industry or through the martial art world, I feel like Jackie Chan's name has become synonymous with mine. Not the reverse, just my name gets connected to Jackie anytime I meet someone in the stunt world or the film world or the martial art world. And it's just, I guess, because that's one of the pinnacles of my career. I always say it doesn't define me, but yeah, I acknowledge it was a pinnacle for me, especially in my Hong Kong time. I still have fond memories of it. A lot of the other movies are a bit of a blur. Things that I learned, especially things like how they set up their shots, the editing component, just framing it, understanding the edit and having a clear vision. I learned all of that from my time on Operation Condor, and I do apply that even now. But it still remains, for me, the pinnacle of my film career during my time in Hong Kong.